They got the knowledge you crave. Hard hitting insight gonna make you win. Listen up closely, let the games begin. Top pick sleepers every week I spin. The FF universe here to help you win. The fantasy football universe.
What is going on? Welcome into the double FU, the FU times 2, the fantasy football universe. I am Jeremy Shulman here, joined by, if I point in the right direction, Mike Anthony, a Dynasty Dog Mike on Twitter. We are here today doing a Scott Fishbowl 15 mock draft. We're going to go 12 rounds, 60 seconds per pick. And look, before we get into it, I just got to say, I don't know how you feel about it, Mike, but AI may kill us all, but at least it's, churning out some pretty dope intros for us here at the FFU. How's it going, man?
Pretty good, but the only AI we respect around here is Allen Iverson. But yeah, it's definitely makes things easier on us when it comes to making graphics, when it comes to making any kind of pretty much anything. AI has kind of taken over. You see videos now; it's just all AI, and it's hilarious. I do enjoy that.
And I love the tweet. I don't know if you saw it, but I think it was like somebody tweeted that the NBA was looking into AI. To help with, I forget exactly what it was.
I forget how to say his name. The dude from the Pacers.
Tyrese Halliburton. Yeah. But and then the tweet was like an AI generated image of AI like looking at the Achilles injury. So amazing. All right, so we're gonna get into this mock draft in just a couple of minutes, but first we're gonna talk a little bit about the scoring. Let's see what we have here. So if you don't know what's going on, of course, the Scott Fish Bowl, this is the 15th iteration of the Scott Fish Bowl. Scott Fish Bowl is a charitable, let me put myself back on screen here, charitable organization where we all pay to play, basically. We donate. Of course, it's not required, but certainly it is encouraged. You donate, and Fantasy Cares does amazing things throughout the community. Toys for Tots is a big one that they do, but you can go to the Scott Fish Bowl website, scottfishbowl.com, check out all the charities that they're involved in. So in addition to it being a major, fantasy event of the season, it's also a charitable organization. So please donate to Fantasy Cares if you can. But we are here to talk today about the actual the event and what you should do in terms of strategy. And we'll just give you a little bit of our insights into that. So here are the scoring basics. You have 6 points for all touchdowns. That includes passing touchdowns, so something to consider. Of course, you have your passing yards and a point per first down for rushing and receiving. So 6 point per passing touchdowns, of course, elevates the passing QBs, but then you get that point per first down. So Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels, those guys can go nuclear as long as they hit as we expect. Volume is king. You see 0.5 points per carry. And then, of course, 2.5 points per reception, 3.5 points per reception at tight end if you're playing on sleeper. And then you have the quote unquote Travis Hunter rules, where certainly we're not doing return yards this year. That was last year's situation. This year's situation is we are getting defensive scoring in there. Travis Hunter, we expect to play both ways. But certainly if you have, Aaron Rodgers out there throwing 15 interceptions, DK Metcalf has the opportunity for an extra 15 tackles per season. And then, of course, you see we are position agnostic, 2 super flex spots and 9 flex spots. There are no positions here in Scott Fish. So, Mike, I'm going to ask you, I know you were recently just jumped into Scott Fish. What are you thinking in terms of strategy? I know you're going from the 11 spot. I'm at the 12, so it's similar for us. What are you thinking in terms of, how you hope the first few picks play out, or anything else that you're thinking initially about how you're going to approach the draft?
So I'm really hoping for, because that interesting of the half point per carry. So I really want one of those running backs that have high attempts, at least. Like the Derrick Henrys, the Saquon Barkleys. Will that happen? Probably not, especially not at the 12 spot. It's unfortunate. But then I really like what you mentioned about the quarterbacks. 6 point per passing touchdown always propels, but then you have the dual threat, the Konami code. That's a special word, right?
Yep.
Quarterbacks that could kind of break fantasy. And I do like the IDP scoring. I'm in a couple IDP leagues. And that doesn't always mean that the IDP guys get all the points. The offensive players that after picks make tackles and stuff like that is always super interesting. So that adds a little bit of bonus, kind of like the kick returns last year. So it should make it fun. Go for the high scoring or the high interception throwers. Make sure you grab their wide receivers and running backs just to make sure you get extra points.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, he could have 25 tackles by the end of the season. You never know. We're going to fire this draft up in just a minute. Jamie is joining us. Jamie, what is up? Thanks for coming in. But look, I know we're here talking about the Scott Fish Bowl, but certainly these kind of strategies are applicable to any of your drafts that you come across throughout the off season here. If you're going into redraft, of course, the number one thing that you need to make sure that you do is address and check the scoring in your league. That's what we're doing here. It's going to affect everything that we do going forward. If you are not checking your scoring, it's a concern. So make sure that you do that here. We know that, and let's talk about Travis Hunter right before we fire this up. We know that Travis Hunter has the potential to be a top 10 guy. In fact, I think it's Football Guys rankings, he's the number 7 overall player based on his projections. Are you drafting Travis Hunter at the 111? I think the answer is no. Where do you think Travis Hunter could fall for you where you would, really, really have a difficult time letting him go?
I think the 3rd round for me would feel about correct, to be honest with you. Kind of where you're taking some of those upside wide receivers usually. 3rd round feels good just because if he gets a pick, he pretty much, and maybe a couple receptions that might win your week right there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And God forbid an interception for a touchdown. You could also be screwed by that. So I kind of would rather have that on my roster than bet against it.
Yep, totally agree with you. And if you just take one more look at it here, the scoring, let's say that Travis Hunter forces a fumble. Look, interception caught. He doesn't even need to, if that's correct, he doesn't even need to return it. He just needs to pick it for it to get 6 points. And then if he forces a fumble, God forbid he gets a sack and a safety in the same game. I mean, he wouldn't have to do anything on offense. And then whatever he does on offense is bonus. Travis Hunter is the number 7 overall player by some people's metrics. I think on Sleeper, you won't see it here, but I think on Sleeper, he's like he's a top 15 guy. But like you're saying, I agree with you. At the 301 for me, 302 for you, it's hard to pass up on that kind of value. But, will he see all of the snaps that some people think he will see? I don't know. A lot of people talk about, he's playing 2 ways. He's got twice as much of a chance of getting in. So he's certainly risky in that regard. 101. What are you thinking, Mike? Spicy for sure.
That's a bit spicy. That's a little spicy for the pepper on that one. I don't know if I could do that, but hey, the bold get the spoils, I guess. So
that's it. I hear that. Well, with that, we're going to fire it up. We're going to see what happens here. I do not expect Travis Hunter to go number 1, but you never know. Bolander's on the clock here, and Bijan Robinson. I've seen Bijan, I've seen Jamar Chase, and I've seen Brock Bowers, a little bit of Brock Bowers here. Who do you think, if you were up here at the top end of the draft, who would you be hoping to take away? Would it be your number 1 running back, receiver, or tight end?
So it would be my number one running back, and it would probably be Bijan Robinson, because I was on the 4th and Fantasy podcast with Rocco and Hancho a few weeks ago, and my hot take was that Bijan Robinson was going to break CMC's 2019 fantasy season. So in Scott Fish Bowl settings, that would be just absolute diabolical season for Bijan Robinson. And listen, we started to see what the Falcons could look like when they actually feed him the football, let him be the RB1, especially towards the end of that season when Michael Penix came in, and they were looking better as an offense. So I expect that to continue. They have a offensive-minded, obviously, coordinator who comes from the Rams coaching tree, which is never a bad thing. So I'm all in on this offense right now.
Yeah, I hear you. I think we didn't totally see what we wanted to out of the guy you referenced, Zach Robinson, last season as the offensive coordinator there. But what I think is interesting is and this is a guy I know you love. Michael Penix is there. He's fully entrenched. We know he's the starter. Kirk Cousins may be shipped off, but he may just kind of be holding a clipboard for the rest of his career. We got Drake London. We got Kyle Pitts, who I'm excited about because, things are locked in, but you can't get too excited about Kyle Pitts. This offense should be a good offense, and the defense still isn't good enough. So, do you have as high hopes as I do about this offense with Bijan, with Drake, with Penix?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the offense looked an entirely different beast at the end of the season with Kirk Cousins, because watching Kirk, he just didn't look comfortable at all, especially as the season went on. The first week against the Eagles, he actually looked all right, and then it kind of looked a little like it deteriorated from there. I am on the clock.
Yeah. You are. So take a second, make your selection. We'll talk about it in a minute. But something to consider as well here. Yes, this is technically a super flex mock draft. However, you can see Josh Allen, the value of getting Josh Allen there at the end of the first round. And I'm going to do something very similar to you. I'm going to go ahead and take Jaden Daniels. And then I'm going to follow it up with, let's go CD Lamb. I'll let you make your pick. And then we'll talk about the turn here. Personally, I haven't really had a ton of mocks where I've been taking a quarterback here because the scoring is so balanced. You get 2.5 points per reception, 3.5 at tight end. So, there might be a tight end on the board that Mike is considering right now. But it's really kind of how you want to build your squad. So, the reception total is interesting. The carry total is interesting. Someone like Christian McCaffrey, who went off at the 106, I think if he hits, is absolutely a monster. So it's really choose your own adventure here. But I also want a top quarterback if they fall to me. What was your thought process here, Mike, about going Allen Neighbors?
So one, Josh Allen has been the number 1 or number 2 fantasy scorer for the past, I think it's 4 years now, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 5 at this point. So especially in this kind of scoring, I can't let that pass me. And then Neighbors, we've seen Russell Wilson hyper target guys. He's obviously the best wide receiver on that team, whether it's Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, another guy who hyper targets. Jackson Dart, again, a guy who could feed him. I think Malik Neighbors is in for a, we call it a second-year breakout, but he broke out last year. I just think it's good. All the trajectory is just pointing up at this point.
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, I paid too much for Malik Neighbors last week in an auction draft. I paid $1 fewer than CD Lamb. I do just prefer CD Lamb's upside in that offense. I don't think George Pickens caps him at all. That team has no running game. That team's defense is in shambles in terms of Mike Zimmer doesn't really know what he's doing anymore for some reason. But also, Micah Parsons has his issues. The pass rush has not been what it's supposed to be, which is pretty damn good. So it has been surprising there. I think they just throw it a ton. And you mentioned Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart is, whether it's him or Wilson or Jameis, either way, the one thing that these Giants quarterbacks are going to do is throw to the receiver. I'm on the clock here, Mike. As I pick, why don't you have a look at the second round and maybe pick a guy who you really like his value?
So Derrick Henry was in my thought process of my pick at 2-2, and my dynasty brain kicked in. So I don't know, when I looked at Derrick Henry, I'm like, he's, 30 years old. And what if this, that, and the other thing happened? But in reality, I'm still happy with taking Neighbors. But again, it's just very, I know Derrick Henry is going to be at the top of the rushing department, rushing attempts department again this year. So I really like that pick. And then again, Puka Nacua just seems to be a value in any kind of format at this point in his career, or at this point in even drafts. I think he's just going to continue to rise. Obviously Devontae Adams is going to take some targets away, but say what you want about Cooper Kupp, he was still heavily targeted, even if he wasn't as effective. So I think Puka Nacua is still a great value.
Yep. I love those two. And as you're on the clock here, Mike, the guy that you mentioned earlier is still available, Travis Hunter at the 302.
I know. That's what I'm doing.
And I absolutely love it. Let's talk about this situation because we have Brian Thomas, who I think he's still going relatively high. Right here, it looks like he's the wide receiver 7 off of the board. I've dinged him a little bit, but he's roughly a wide receiver 10, wide receiver 11 for me. He's, I'm not going to take too much off the top for him. But of course, you have Travis Hunter coming in. What do you think, regardless of of what the projections are, what do you think Travis Hunter's realistic production is on the wide receiver end in year 1?
I was going to ask you meant just as a wide receiver.
Yeah.
If Trevor Lawrence actually lives up to like the expectations we've had this several years, wide receiver 2, like in that 2022, 18, 20. But in reality, just because of the him playing cornerback, I could see him being kind of like in that 27 to 28 range, right outside the wide receiver 3. Which is not a bad thing, right? I think it would be a really nice start to his career. They were saying he's still learning the wide receiver position in training camp, so it might not be as high as we hope, but it still would be a very solid season.
Yeah, I agree with you. And the athleticism is absolutely there. We expect that the offense will be in place, but there could be growing pains here, right? So if Travis Hunter does something like, 60 receptions for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns, I think you'll have a lot of people saying, well, this is a lost season for Travis Hunter. At the same time, I think that's actually pretty promising for him, especially dealing with BTJ, likely the target hog there. Brenton Strange probably has himself a role. And of course, Travis Etienne does not seem to be going away in the passing game. So interesting there. However, I think that's also Travis Hunter's floor. So you're betting on the fact that his floor is significantly higher than most guys and that he's got that potential boom ceiling just because he's so damn good at football.
For sure. I went low just to be on the safer side because, if you say things too high, people start coming out of the woodwork with pitchforks and knives and all that stuff for me. So I could absolutely see what you're saying. It's just I'm trying to temper my expectations. I don't really feel that there's like a wide receiver from this class that kind of has the Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas type season. I think it's more on the, mid wide receiver 2, wide receiver, low end wide receiver 2. And again, not a bad season at all. It's just I don't see that same level of talent.
Yeah, it's like a Marv
Right
season
away, anyway.
from a year ago. Yeah,
Yeah,
and so
sure. Like that would be perfect. Or Rome.
Yeah. Look,
but I think Travis Hunter would be the best wide receiver this year for fantasy.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Tet has a chance, but I also am betting heavily on Adam Thielen being the guy at least for the first quarter, if not first half of the season in Carolina. But Tet certainly will be the guy toward the end at the latest. Let's take a look at the draft and how it's gone. So certainly, let me zoom in here with my old ass eyes. I went with Drake London at the 301. We talked about him at the top. I just think he's got massive upside. I tend to be fading running backs. I shouldn't be. At the same time, the wide receiver value at 2.5 points per reception is awesome. In another mock or in reality, once I do the Scott Fishbowl, I might take Trey McBride at the 201. I fantasize about the Bowers Trey McBride turn at the 1-2. That disgusting. I absolutely love. Yeah, I love it. I mean, look, theoretically, if Bowers fell for some reason, I doubt he does. But if he fell, if you look at the way the board falls, I could go Bowers, McBride, Kittle, 1, 2, 3. And because we're position agnostic, these are the guys that we expect over other guys to get that heavy volume. We want to see a tight end at 3.5 points per reception. This is the thing, Mike. I got to see if I can pull this up quickly. I can. Last season, if you apply this season's scoring to last season's production, you have guys like, let's see, Travis Kelce, who had a down season, number 28? Yeah, number 28 overall. For Kelce's down season. You have guys like, let's see, George Kittle, of course, he had a good season, 34 overall. You have Zach Ertz, 67 overall. Zach Ertz scoring, of course, Puka was hurt for a fair amount of games. For 60, scoring as many points as Puka Nacua, scoring as many points as T. Higgins, as Zay Flowers. So there's really an advantage here to be had at the tight end position. What are you thinking beyond these top 3 tight ends? Who are you looking to take, and who are you hoping falls to you out of value at the tight end position this year?
You're trying to make me give away my draft strategy here,
Give
Jeremy.
away all the secrets. Do it.
I can't. I no. I really honestly believe Evan Ingram is the best value, especially in tight end
Agree.
premium formats. I think he could get back to what he did in 2023, being a top. I think it was top 3 tight end finish, if I'm not mistaken, or he was the one. I don't remember exactly what it was, but just a target earner, a target. That was where I was thinking of going. By the way, Omari and Hampton, but
Yep.
I think that's a perfect pick. I've really struggled with taking running backs here. I don't know what's going on in my brain, but
Same.
but Evan Ingram is really, I to be honest with you, one of my favorite, redraft dynasty and win now, even in this format. Like, I think he could be very, 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 very good again in this offense, because this is what Sean Payton wants in a tight end, a guy who can just eat up in the middle of the field, and that's kind of what they were missing last year. Because Cortland Sutton is a boundary guy, Marvin Mims is a deep threat. Evan Ingram is just a dude who can just create in the middle, create after the catch, just a very solid overall tight end.
Absolutely. And as you make your pick here, I don't think anyone would be completely shocked, or if you were shocked, I would be surprised if Evan Ingram was able to do what Jonnu Smith was able to do last year. Of course, we don't know that the touchdowns are going to be there necessarily, because that's always the variable with whoever you're talking about in fantasy. But Evan Ingram being the joker in Sean Payton's offense, which seems like a lock at this point, just with, I know we both love RJ Harvey, but just with everything that people are kind of talking about with Harvey, the fact that he's a rookie, maybe it takes him a while. I mean, Evan Ingram seems to be the guy right now who's going to see those early looks at the joker position, which is lining him up all over the field, giving him all these different outs and options to catch the football. And we know he's athletic enough to do it. I don't think anyone would be shocked if he put up a season like Jonnu Smith did last year. Jonnu Smith, the 24th overall scoring player in this scoring format last year. And if you're talking about Evan Ingram, he's not even close to off the board at the moment.
Yeah, that's why you're really scared to say it. I almost just picked him at the last pick just to get it out of the way, so it shouldn't happen.
Yeah.
Really reached. Does Sleeper still do when you pick like someone really? Do they still do that? I haven't heard it in a long time.
I don't think they do that anymore, and they got rid of their characters as well. They're trying to go a little bit more mainstream, I think. But
I don't know why they would do that. That was fun. What do you think? What do you think of Justin Fields over Kyler Murray?
For this season, I like
right
it.
Before my pick. You do? Okay.
Yeah. I literally just sold Kyler Murray as a home league, so I got Kyler Murray for the 104 and selected Amari and Hampton. We just started our rookie draft in my home league today, so really happy about that. But yeah, I think Kyler Murray he has a chance to bounce back, but I just think Justin Fields is basically, he's not Lamar, but he's Jaden Daniels on the ground, right? And so, he's that just below the best, right? He's the number 2, number 3 best rushing quarterback. And that's really what I want. Look, again, we talked about it. 6 points per passing touchdown. Does Justin Fields hit the 20 touchdown threshold? Maybe not. But does he, run for 1,000 yards? I think it's locked if he plays every single game.
I think we're kind of forgetting how good Kyler Murray is, to be honest with you. He was still a top 10 fantasy scoring quarterback last year. And people are just whatever. Obviously, because the year before that was his injured year, but the year before that was a top 5 season, right? So I think we're sleeping a little bit because the 1-2 punch of him and Marvin Harrison really didn't take off. Him and Trey McBride really, fed families in fantasy. But I think Kyler Murray's become a pretty decent value, and I just took him here, so I believe he could do again or even plus what he did last year if he's healthy and if that connection with Marv continues to grow. Yeah,
I do agree with you, but I am going to go Fields over Kyler, and it's really just the rushing upside for me. The other thing, too, to consider is You know his name because he was a former Eagle coordinator. Who's the head coach in Arizona?
Oh God, I almost said Shane Steichen.
Not-
Jonathan Gannon.
Say it again.
Jonathan Gannon.
Oh, Gannon. Yeah, thank you. Gannon has really done something interesting, which I didn't think is possible. Is he's actually kind of developed a decent defense over in Arizona, and so I think that's the difference here. Is Aaron Glenn, I think, certainly has the capability to develop that defense in New York, but it's his first season. Gannon's been at it for years. Arizona's been pounding defense in the draft, and I really, really do like the fact that Kyler isn't going to have to do it all. Justin Fields, he's going to have to do it all. So we'll see if he can. But let's get to this point that you just brought up here. Fresh startup, super flex. We got started 11, Knicks, Purdy, Neighbors, Puka, Olave. I assume that's Travion Henderson, 326 first, 327 first. I assume that is. That's not too bad. What do you think, Mike?
No, I think he's on the right direction, right? I think maybe package Olave and one of those 26 first and try to up tier a little bit.
Yeah.
Obviously you have 3 of them. You could move one. Your team has really good building blocks. I went back to this because we must have missed it in the comments.
Yep.
So we apologize for that. But I think if you package like a 26 first and Olave, Olave's value is kind of tanked, but he's still worth like that. What do you think? In late first, early second range at this point. So if you could package him to get like who do you think would be a good tier up option from there?
Well, you can't get a guy like Drake.
No.
Interesting, I'd say about a year, maybe 2 years ago, Olave and T. Higgins were right on the same level. And I think Olave has fallen so far that you would have to add significantly to get to T. Higgins. But I mean, T. Higgins locked in Cincinnati with no defense to speak of, and Joe Burrow just slinging the rock. As long as Burrow's healthy, as long as T is healthy, I mean, I think that's a smash. You could also go for Devonta Smith is not high enough.
I was thinking that, but
can you get to Ladd with a first and Olave?
I think that's doable. I actually think that's a solid move. It's a chance. If you have to throw a third on top of that, like if they counter with a third, like I would just do that because thirds are all dart throws anyway, right? So I think that's the perfect core Neighbors, Puka, and Ladd within Henderson.
Yeah.
I think you're still a running back away, obviously, but you with the core wide receivers you had, you really just need like a running back 2 option at this point. I get a pick here.
Yep, totally agree with you. Thanks, Alex, for the chat. We will answer them. Whatever you throw in, we will get to it eventually. Let's talk about this as Mike makes his pick. Walker's value in the 4th. I absolutely love Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is such a value right now. People are so down on him. I think it's the injuries. It's the fact that, we don't assume at this point that he can stay healthy for a full 17-game season. He hasn't proven it, and Zach Charbonnet is more than capable. Zach Charbonnet is at least 90% Kenneth Walker. The problem for Zach Charbonnet is he's not 100% Kenneth Walker because Kenneth Walker is better. But will Kenneth Walker stay on the field is the question. Mike, I know you're a little down on Walker. I think on our last show, that's exactly what you discussed. What do you think about Walker's value, though, here in the 4th round? Are you happy taking the shot? Let's say he fell to 2 spots. Would you be happy taking the shot on him in the 4th?
Would I be happy to say, yeah, I would, because what you're getting in the 4th round is a guy who could take over a game. He could break those, 40, 50-yard runs. He's a decent pass catcher. The oblique injuries is what scares the absolute hell out of me, right?
Yeah.
It's every single year. We talked about it last week. It's very interesting to see what he looks like this year if he's fully healthy. My fear is that he's just never as consistent as like a Zach Charbonnet. Consistent is not the right word. He's never as what's the word? Like I can't think of the word right now. I'm blanking. You get 4 yards in a cloud of dust from Zach Charbonnet compared to Ken Walker, who might try to bounce it out and get efficient. That's the word. Jeremy, you didn't help me there at all.
No, I was searching. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, that was. I think Ken Walker could be a really nice piece. He just needs to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing. And fourth round, it's still not a bad value.
Yep. I like that. And I certainly like his value over a guy like Amarian Hampton. Amarian Hampton, I think Amarian Hampton's a league winner, but I think that comes in the second half of the season. I'm not sure what you get in the first half of the season. And in order to win the league, you have to get to the playoffs. And I wonder how much he helps you throughout those first 6 to 8 games. Najee, as long as he's healthy, is going to be the 1A at the beginning. At the end, no chance. It's Hampton for sure. Let's take a look at some of these running backs, mentioning them. Let's go from the 5th round after Hampton. We have James Cook, Travion Henderson. Then you got the Olds and Mixon and Connor. You got Caleb Johnson, DeAndre Swift, Isaiah Pacheco, interesting value. I took Travis Etienne, but I was looking at Aaron Jones, and then David Montgomery went. What do you think about these 5 backs here so far selected in rounds 6 and 7? Who do you like the most at their value? Who do you think is the highest upside?
Highest upside, I think, is James Cook, right? And then Travion Henderson would be a very close, like 1A, 1B. But the most consistent guy on that board for me would be James Conner, right? I think he's just, the guy, give him the ball 20 some odd times, he's going to get you, over 80 yards and a TD. He's just going to be very solid all around. And I think they wanted to continue giving him the football for at least another year. So I'm very interested in James Conner. I'm still happy with James Cook just because of the PPR asset that he is, the explosive player that he is. But James Conner is just a very consistent dude. So I kind of maybe would rethink my pick and maybe take Conner there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Connor has shown that he is healthy enough. He's certainly been a lot healthier than some of these guys, but we did have an outlier season of health at the running back position last year. So let's talk a little bit about that. Mike says to us, Walker is like CMC who doesn't catch the football. He's definitely got the talent, but also has the injury pedigree. So you have to be careful about that each year. Chev chiming in with Devon Achane. What do we think of his value? Is he going to be able to do what he did last year and potentially build on that with maybe, fewer, guys in competition with Raheem Mostert out there and a lot of unknowns? Of course, a healthy Tua, you hope that maintains. What do you think about Achane this
year? This is what Jeff wanted. If I have to depend on one, him being healthy, yes, he played a full season, and Tua being healthy, that scares the absolute shit out of me, right? They had their left tackle retired, if I'm not mistaken, right? Teron Armstead retired. So that's another big thing. And then, Chev has been giving me hell for this because I worry about his pass protection on third downs. And obviously, we don't have to worry about that fantasy football points, but that's just, it's just something that plays in the back of my mind. I just gotta, if I have to worry about 2 things for 2 players to stay healthy for one guy, it makes me a little bit more nervous.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's not just 2 things, right? It's, Ollie Gordon showed some promise. Certainly he was like a 6th or 7th round pick in the draft. So he fell off considerably, but he's a big enough back where, Devon Achane is not the guy who's going to necessarily be the goal line guy, right? You're counting on him to break up the big explosives. You got Jalen right back there. You're not going to have Tua concerns because of the concussions, but you also have Ollie Gordon, who he brought in, and you got Alexander Madison. All of those guys can handle the goal line. So you just kind of wonder if he's going to be able to continue that high level of efficiency. He's certainly explosive. He's certainly used properly in the right scheme, but Tyreek Hill didn't have a great year last year. Jalen Waddle had a terrible year last year. So you do wonder if that's going to continue.
Another season. Maybe Jonnu has another season. I think they want to get Jalen Wright involved. They moved up to I didn't like Jalen Wright, but they moved up to draft him last year. So I don't know. It remains to be seen. I'm not as high on Devon Achane as everybody else, but I get the appeal just because he can absolutely put you up like a 50 burger.
He can. I'll answer this question as you answer the question of who you're going to draft next. Jamie and Jim Coventry came up with a good argument of why the Ken Walker combo won't die, why Walker Charbonnet will flop. Defensive coordinators last year put a fifth defensive lineman, which stopped Kubiak's zone scheme last year in New Orleans. So the idea is that you're just going to run a bunch of 5-2 defenses at this zone running scheme. What I would say to that is, JSN moving all over the field. Noah Fant is athletic enough, certainly, and you just have a Arroyo who was brought into the fold. You got Cooper Kupp, who is sure-handed and going to be a reliable target. And you got Sam Darnold, who, for everything that Sam Darnold is not great at, he showed great ability last season, but for everything he's not great at, he is really good at seeing ghosts and will probably want to get the ball out as quickly as possible. What do you think about this argument? Are you concerned about Seattle in any way and the run game?
Not so much. I think they are still going to want to run the football, but like we mentioned last week, I think the plan is really to make JSN the top guy in that offense. You just took Kyle Pitts. That is, we need words. We need words for that.
We'll do it.
But I think the passing game has become more effective. Not more effective, but I think the offense is going to surround JSN, and then Kenneth Walker is going to be the second option.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and we will see what happens there. I'm not only going to take Kyle Pitts, but I'm also looking at the board here, and this is prime time for me to take Chris Olave. I'm higher than Chris Olave on most, but of course, he has Tyler Shuck likely throwing him the football. If it's not Tyler Shuck, I'm actually more worried. So you have to be careful. But this is where I'm taking Kyle Pitts. Look, it's 3.5 points per reception. We love every other piece of the Atlanta offense. Kyle Pitts can and should have a moderately productive season. And if he has moderate production in this scoring format, he's going to have excellent production. I don't mind him as kind of my potential last flex spot here in the 8th round. Talk to me about Kyle Pitts.
I can't get with it, to be honest with you. I've tried to keep the dream alive. And you notice I took Dalton Kincaid, who's been my guy forever, and I'm back in one more year for him. So it kind of falls in that same. I'm trying to hit draft. It's not working. There we go.
Sorry.
I'm trying to keep the dream alive with him as well. So I just Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Darnell Mooney. I think Kyle Pitts is starting to become the odd man out, right? Because we saw Darnell Mooney look good last year, right? Obviously, Kyle Pitts is the athletic freak tight end who should be playing wide receiver, who should be, the heir apparent to what Travis Kelce was. I think we hope for it every single year, and we keep getting let down by it. I don't know. I just maybe he was banged up last year. I know the year before he was banged up, and we can't keep making excuses for him though.
I hear you. I hear you. Hear me when I ask you who had more fantasy points in this scoring format based on last year's production. Devonta Smith, probably the best number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, or arguably top 3 number 2 wide receiver in the NFL, or Mike Gesicki.
I'm gonna take a shot in the dark. That's probably Mike Gesicki because it's
Mike Gesicki.
It's a very leading question.
It is. It's Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki had 1 fewer point in this scoring format than Jameson Williams last year. So this is my point: is Kyle Pitts is good enough. We've seen it to achieve tight end 6, 7, 8-ish numbers over the course of a year. And of course, he has better situation going into this season than he did last year. Ryan says what? The year you stop believing is the year they go off. That's right. Listen, Devontae Parker, same thing.
We have to bring Devontae Parker in to prop up Kyle Pitts. We are on strong right now.
I love it. I know you're high on Michael Penix. You just think Michael Penix gets there without Kyle Pitts having a decent tight end season.
What do you consider like a decent tight end season for Kyle Pitts?
So last season, tight ends, 14 tight ends had 600 plus receiving yards. 7 tight ends had 6 plus touchdowns. So five 500, I'd say 600 receiving yards and 5 to 6 touchdowns.
I mean, I think that's obviously doable, right? But I don't
Yeah.
think, I mean, in this format, that might do it, but I don't think that does it in most other formats, right? I think that would probably put him at the, what, tight end 12 to 14, 15, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
at that point,
depend.
it's like, I think I'd rather take a gamble on like a Mark Andrews.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. But Mark Andrews went, let's see, at the 7-11, right? My concern
Oh, he's
or lack
gone?
of
Wow.
concern. Yeah.
Well, I keep
My
getting lost in the
issue is,
tight ends because Mike Eliu took like 17 of them. He's got a whole band of tight ends.
yeah, because Mike Lou is a smart man. Absolutely. You should follow that man on Twitter because he is a smart man and he's got all this information up there. But listen, Tucker Kraft, that is an insane value at Tucker Kraft there at the 1001. Tucker Kraft was one of those guys who had over 600 yards. The crazy thing about the tight end position that people refuse to understand is, yes, we want the guys at the top because they're guaranteed volumes. Yes, we can't necessarily count on touchdowns because they're not a sticky stat year over year. But tight ends overall are being more utilized in the passing game. We saw this with the Jonnu Smith breakout. Like, we all want kind of that next Jonnu Smith, but at the same time, you can get a Mike Gesicki in like the 17th, 18th round of this tournament, and he can absolutely produce as a top 10 tight end for you. And at 3.5 points per reception, that's exactly what you want. I think Mike's on the right track. In fact, let's have a look at what Mike has done here at tight end. Bowers, Kittle, Laporta, Warren, Jonnu, and Loveland. Obviously, those rookies are a little concerning. The rest of those values at tight end, I absolutely love it. I love what he did here. And look, I'm going to be leaving my Scott Fishbowl draft with at least 4, probably 5, 6, maybe 7 tight ends. So I love this strategy. Not for you, Mike?
No, it is, but it's a lot of orange, right? It's a lot more orange than I was expecting because this is my first mock draft for Scott Fish. So, but the plethora of tight ends, he's got some of the best ones in Brock Bowers, George Kittle, Sam Laporta. At least 3 of those guys are going to finish. Those 3 guys are going to finish in the top 5. You would imagine, right? And then Tyler Warren and Jonnu Smith. We've seen Jonnu do it. Will it happen with a full healthy team in Miami? If Miami's healthy, that's going to be interesting to find out. And Tyler Warren, let's see who the quarterback is first before we put any hope in behind him just yet. I'm still trying to believe in Anthony Richardson, so trying to. It's not as easy.
I agree with that 100%. Speaking of Anthony Richardson, has he gone off the board? Because he's an interesting pick in this area of the draft. Jared Goff, look, we know he's not playing in domes this year, at least on the road. Jordan Love still remains to be seen if he can achieve that top end. Would you take a shot here on Anthony Richardson in the hopes that, he's the starter all season, or are you just out on him?
No, I don't think I would take him here. I have my rushing quarterback in Kyler Murray. And Josh Allen for that matter. Yep. So I don't really know if I want to go with all 3 of those guys, right? Because injuries do happen, especially when you run the football more. I don't feel comfortable with that. So I am going to take a 3rd quarterback here. And that's going to be my guy, Michael Penix. So,
nice.
I have to do it. Grayson Thomas says my first draft and with other people, and my live draft is tomorrow. I really want to try going to a live draft next year. I don't know why I didn't do it this year. It just looks awesome. Looks like an awesome time. So, Grayson, I hope you have a great time. I'm hoping to do that next time.
Yeah, man, you got to. I'm really excited. I've never done it either, but I am going to London from Amsterdam. I used to live in London. So we'll go to a Belushi's. The Belushi's actually they're going to have it at has a really nice downstairs area. They call it the dugout. It's beautifully done. I've been there for football Sundays many times. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, my first experience. So Mike, let's make sure that you get into the Philly Live next year.
The degenerates around me in Philadelphia.
That's it. With that, oh, you got me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and I took Matt Stafford, kind of panicked, but yeah.
It's gonna
we'll
happen.
see if he's Yeah, but look, if he's able to put up the 40 points, 40 touchdowns that he's done in the past, I absolutely love that. I think there's a few quarterbacks who are a value, so I'm going to leave quarterback on the board. And then we'll see. We got Trey Harris. We got Jordan Mason, who at this point I'm not too unhappy with. Yeah, I think Jordan Mason is going to, or Zach Ertz is also there. I'll take Mason, but Zach Ertz was a consideration. So let me scroll down here. I don't love that term, but I needed a QB2. Matt Stafford is at least safe for that. I've also stacked him with Devontae Adams. Question for you about stacking. After you make your pick, I'll just talk a little bit about it from my perspective here. I don't think stacking is necessary, but I think if stacking falls to you, like Michael Penix was the guy I was looking at here, simply because I have Drake London and Kyle Pitts, I really think that offers you an advantage in a large-scale tournament like this. We're not doing best ball, certainly, where that strategy is lauded. At the same time, you definitely want to be able to win a week when it matters in the playoffs. And I think stacking really helps. So Penix was my target, but I'll take Stafford as well. Goff, certainly with Jameson Williams, I have that option too, but losing Ben Johnson for me was a bit too much on that.
Oh my God,
end.
where'd his name go?
What are you looking for?
There, I found it.
Hey, we got there. Talk to me quickly about your thoughts about stacking in a tournament like this, Mike, and then talk to me about Cedric Tillman.
I am a big fan of stacking. It just makes it a little bit more fun, right? Because when you turn on red zone and your quarterback just happens to throw in a touchdown to your wide receiver or your running back for that matter, it's just fun all the way around. And again, I was looking at Khalil Shakir a few picks ago for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
So that's been his 1A, 1B, or his 1A target for the past few years. So I ended up going with Dalton Kincaid, who, has been reported that he was a lot more banged up than we originally knew about last year. So
Sure.
I've got that hopium for Dalton Kincaid. I hope I don't fall in the Kyle Pitts sword when it comes to that. So it's going to be very interesting.
Yep.
Now, Cedric Tillman.
Yep.
I am just a big fan of Cedric Tillman. I really think what we saw last year, what was it, from week 6 on? I can't remember the exact weeks, that he was on a tear until he, got a face full of turf where he had a concussion. Yep. Those things happen. I think that's his ceiling, and I think the floor is really not bad for a guy like Cedric Tillman. If Cedric Tillman ends up being like a Michael Pittman-esque kind of guy, I really think that's solid. Flex worthy, wide receiver 3 worthy. My comp for Tillman coming out of college was Alshon Jeffrey, which would, again, not be a bad thing. In an offense where, they're really looking for a dominant guy outside of Jerry Jeudy, a more dominant physical presence. I think Cedric Tillman is absolutely that guy. Again, we saw it last year. And Joe Flacco has no problem, even at his ripe old age, has no problem attempting to air it out and force feeding guys. And you're getting the older version of Jameis Winston in Joe Flacco, right? And we've seen Joe Flacco feed X targets like Michael Pittman just a year ago, if I'm not mistaken. So Cedric Tillman fits that perfect mold for a guy like Joe Flacco.
Yeah, I agree with you on Flacco. He's the guy who I expect will start most of the season. Will he start the whole season? Probably not. I don't think the Browns are good enough on the offensive side of the ball to get to the playoffs to even really contend. It's going to take him a year. We'll see what those other quarterbacks can do, but I love Flacco for most of the season. And if he's in there and he's healthy, he's going to be slinging the rock. We know that's true. Let's stick with this question, though. This is a good one here. What do you think, Mike, about the necessity of QB2 in this format? It's interesting to consider, for example, Matthew Stafford, someone who you hope gets to that 40 touchdown plateau again in this format because he offers you no rushing upside, or betting on someone like Cooper Kupp or Ricky Pearsall, who's a tremendous value in this particular draft. Do you think QB2 is necessary?
It really depends what the value looks like, right? Like where I took Kyler Murray, I thought that was decent value. I was considering Amari and Hampton. Would I like my team a little bit better with Amari and Hampton? Possibly, because then I could have gotten a guy like Matthew Stafford, like you mentioned, Drake May later on. who's got a high rushing floor that I don't think we've really tapped into just yet. So I think it's necessary, but I think you can wait longer than possibly I did to taking Kyler Murray.
Yep. I agree with you as well. Kyler Murray, or you can wait for Baker in the next round. You could have got a Hampton Baker or Hampton Knicks over Kyler. But look, Kyler absolutely has that top 6 upside. We've seen it before. I'm not sure that Bo Nix, for example, has that top 6 upside, although he was really close. I mean, what was he, 7? He was like QB7 last year. So maybe he does have that top 6 QB upside. But this is really interesting too. Forget quarterbacks. Look at all the tight ends that just went off the board. This is tremendous value. This is what you need to be doing, in my opinion, in the Scott Fish Bowl, is you need to absolutely pound tight end. Like we talked about what Mike did here at the 7 with all of these tight ends, and I'm fine with that. But look at the 1 here, right? If you're able to pick up Bijan, BTJ, Marv, Quinshawn, Caleb, and then you end up with Travis Kelce, Tucker Kraft, Cade Otton, and Jatavian Sanders. I mean, I love that value at tight end. I might prefer Zach Ertz and Hunter Henry to those last 2 tight ends. At the same time, it's pick your flavor. If these guys can produce the way they produced, they're going to outproduce guys like Ricky Pearsall, Wan'Dale Well, maybe not Wan'Dale in this format, but Ricky Pearsall, Matthew Golden, Josh Downs. They have that potential because they did it last year. Cade Otton was in the same breath as Josh Downs. So it's just, you got to play the scoring format.
Yeah, I really like that Hunter Henry pick at the last pick, their last pick of the draft. I just think he's just undervalued every year, and he's not a guy who is just going to blow the doors off. He's going to be that tight end 8 to 12 in that range, right? He's going to be a high like PPR asset, or he'll be a red zone touchdown threat kind of guy. He was Drake May's safety blanket all last year. So I still like that. And they didn't address the tight end position like I thought they were going to in this draft.
Yep.
With my pick here, kind of going to go maybe out of what I would normally do because the tight end run has kind of gone dry. But there's a rookie tight end that I'm kind of interested in.
I was going to take him.
Who is it?
Mason Taylor.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm taking. So sorry to snipe you with the last pick here. I'm glad I can do that. So I'm not actually sorry. I like Mason Taylor. Currently, he's got to be the tight end 1 on that team, right? And we've seen Justin Fields feed tight ends with Cole Kmet, cut just a couple years ago. So, a decent season for Mason Taylor is not out of the realm of possibility. I liked him a decent amount. He is a guy who's just always around the first down marker, right? And I believe the first down marker points, there are first down marker points. There are first down points.
Yeah, for first down points. Correct.
So I mean, adding that to the tight end premium is just gold to me.
Yep, I agree with you, and I'm going to do the same thing. There's a lot of names here that I might take not in a realistic draft, like Austin Eckler, potentially Daniel Jones, but I'm just going to take Mike Gesicki because he's probably he's probably a number 3 target, and you're telling me that at the end of the 12th round, I can get a guy who scored at more fantasy points than Jordan Addison in this format last season. And Jordan Addison went where? At the 804, and I'm at the 1212 here. He scored more fantasy points than Khalil Shakir, who we mentioned, than Josh Downs, than Marvin Harrison. Of course, these aren't point per game. These are total points. So that's a consideration, but you need to be hammering tight ends. Pick the guys that you believe in. Chig Okonkwo. Yeah, could be. Tyler Lockett, I think, is probably second in receptions, but I don't think Tyler Lockett really has more than 65. So if you think Chig can get up to 65 receptions, then I would agree with you. What do you think about Chig?
I think he could be. I think second in receptions is with Tyler Lockett there. It's going to be tough, right? But I don't see Tyler Lockett getting more than 65, like you mentioned. So is it in the realm of possibilities? Yes. I think Calvin Ridley's going to smash receptions out of anybody there. Yeah, I could
For
see
sure.
it, and especially in this format. I think that's a great pick as well. And again, another tight end for Mike.
Yeah.
Which
Lo- Smart, smart. That's the way I would love to do this. I probably, if so, look, I'm going to ask you this and I'll do my team first, but let's talk about our individual teams and just things we would have done differently or things that we absolutely love. Personally, I probably would have taken Trey McBride over CD Lamb. That doesn't necessarily mean that I am going to go after Kyler Murray if he would have fallen, for example, to the 412, but just the tight end upside is crazy. So Trey for me instead of Lamb, that's really close. But I will go Trey with the addition of George Pickens. He cuts in maybe a tiny bit. And then, Travis Etienne, I don't love it. I was considering Aaron Jones there as well. Of course, you worry about health with an aging Aaron Jones. That was kind of my tiebreaker there. And then Kyle Pitts at the 8-12. Should I have taken Tucker Kraft over Kyle Pitts? Maybe. Should I was looking at Najee. Didn't love Najee with Hampton. So I went Pitts. I went for upside. But, I don't mind it. I'm going to give myself a B, a solid B for how this draft went, for how I expect it to go. What are you thinking, Mike, about how your draft ended up? Is there anything you regret? Anything you love?
I would give myself a C. I had a lot of panic picks in there, to be honest with you. I like the pick of Aaron Jones. I knew you were just talking about the injury concern with him. I do think, he's not going to rush a ton, but he's still going to get, a lot of PPR points. And I think with JJ, with dump offs, with, coming off, being his rookie season, essentially, and, coming off the injury, I think they're going to look to get the ball out quickly, and Aaron Jones would fit that perfectly. Again, we talked about earlier how I would probably have gone like a Omarion Hampton over Kyler Murray in that spot, and then waited to take a quarterback later on. And then I missed out on Evan Ingram. So all the things I wanted, I just didn't fucking do. So I don't know what is going on, but this is my first mock for Scott Fishbowl. So now I know, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on me again, probably. But I definitely could see myself doing things a little bit differently than I did here.
Yeah, listen, it's all a practice, and I need to be taking more running backs personally. Marion Hampton, Travis Etienne, Jordan Mason is not going to do it. But I love the rest of my team, and then of course there's Kyle Pitts. But let's move on. Killer says, last year it was adding all of those kickers and or returners at the end of the draft. This year, it's got to be the tight end. You have to, try and find the Jonnu Smith in this format. The guy who's going to absolutely break out. Is it Chig Okonkwo? It might be. Is it Mike Gesicki again, who, again, was the 82nd overall player? Is it any of these rookie tight ends who haven't been picked? Tyler Higbee has not been picked. That's a guy that I'll be targeting in the middle rounds, I think, as well, especially if I end up with a guy like Matt Stafford. There's a real benefit to Dawson Knox, right? Like, think about these tight ends who are one injury away from seeing a crap ton of volume. Dawson Knox is that tight end. Arroyo is probably that tight end with Sam Darnold as quarterback now in a Kubiak system. Juwan Johnson is probably one of those guys, assuming he's going to be a check down outlet. And then, banking on Alvin Kamara to stay healthy, we'll see. But if Kamara doesn't stay healthy, we don't have Taysom Hill anymore. Juwan Johnson could be a steal as well.
What about Brenton Strange not being picked?
Yeah.
That's another one. I mean, I'm not, huge fan of Strange, but, with the loss of Evan Ingram, with Travis Hunter being a rookie, maybe, Brenton Strange has a little bit of juice that that I don't really foresee, but in this format, he could be great. Michael Mayer, please, God, just trade him anywhere. Please.
Yes.
I know he's a solid tight end. Like, I hate it that he's just sitting behind Brock Powers. Like, you're never going to beat him out. Yeah. So, unfortunately, Tank Bigsby is another guy that kind of intrigues me a little bit. I don't know what to make of that running back room, right? With Etienne, Deshaun Tootin, Tank Bigsby, Quinn Allen. Don't forget about him. So that'll be interesting to see. What about Terrence Ferguson? Oh, no, sorry. Terrence Ferguson is another one, but the one that actually, I just scrolled down a little further, Theo Johnson. Like, he's got to be the tight end one there, right? He could be the
Yep.
guy. He could be the guy you get right after your draft that you pick up on waivers or
Yep.
whatever, just to stash.
There he is. Yeah. I
Way
agree with
down
you.
there.
If you look at these projections too, and again, it's not Scott Fishbowl scoring accurate, but if you look at these projections, Theo Johnson 2 touchdowns. Look, I know we're wondering if Jackson Dart's going to hit that 20 touchdown threshold. It's probably unlikely. But can Jackson Dart throw 15? All right, let's see. Can the Giants quarterbacks throw 20 touchdowns? I think the answer is yes. Because we're probably going to assume Russ, maybe a little Jameis. Dart should get in there. Can they throw 20 touchdowns? I'd say yes. Malik Neighbors, I think he's capped probably at 12
or
touchdowns.
12,
Yeah, 10. Let's give him 12. And let's say there's 20. We got 8 more touchdowns. We got to give what? 4 to the backs, maybe 5.
Mhm.
Let's be really generous here. There's 3 touchdowns left. Okay, so maybe Theo Johnson 2 touchdowns makes sense.
You just talked yourself into it.
I did. But consider a guy, not Terrence Ferguson, but Brenton Strange, the guy you mentioned as well, right? We're only banking on 3 touchdowns from Brenton Strange in what should be a much improved, more functional offense, where they have a completely different system in place. Komet's interesting too. I know Loveland went. But Komet is interesting to me, but not necessarily his production this year. I prefer him in Dynasty. Juwan Johnson is that guy, I think. But there are a lot of question marks. You got to try and pick the guy who's going to score touchdowns. John, had 13 touchdowns last year, which is why he did what he did.
Yeah, I don't know about Cole Kmet, to be honest with you. Like 12 personnel sounds fun in theory, but when you have, a plethora of wide receivers, why are you taking them off the field, right?
I agree. Especially that offense. Luther Burden will be healthy at some point. They need to get that guy going, or else why pick him? Fun stuff for KLS. Thank you. We had a great time. Mike Kittle is leading tight end university. Hey, Taylor Swift was there boosting up tight ends at tight end university, performing apparently. Mike, we thank you for your service and joining us up. Last question for you here, Mike. Let's look at some of these other teams here. I will go first to give you time. Pick a team or 2 that you'd like to highlight. I will start with Mike, just because I absolutely love the tight end build from the 107. Bowers, Kittle, Laporta, and Jonnu. But then, of course, you have the wild cards of Tyler Warren, who should see the volume in that offense. He should be at worst the number 3. I think he's probably the number 2, maybe the number 1. You got Colson Loveland, who you just hope he gets on the field enough, and then Chiga Conquo. You want high volume tight ends, and you want to try to find those values. Outside of that, you got Amon-Ra, you got JSN, high volume wide receivers. You got Jacoby Myers, another sneaky high volume wide receiver potentially. I know we both love Geno Smith and what the Raiders are trying to do in that offense. Then you got Brock Purdy to tie it all together. No running backs. And I do see Trey Benson here, but no running backs to speak of from Mike Lou. So maybe the one issue there. But I do love that build. It's at least interesting. And then I'm going to go to the 105 at Jay Sargent. So hopefully I didn't steal yours. Jameer Gibbs, Puka, Ladd, Pat Mahomes at value, Connor, who we talked about, DK, Drake May, Judy, Scatterba. I mean, all of these picks from 1 through 9 for me are phenomenal. And they get Pearsall and then the sneaky Wan'Dale Robinson, who I think was like a top 20 guy. Let me give you the exact numbers here, because again, we're at 2.5 points per reception. Let me find Robinson's name. This is great podcasting as I scroll. Number 74 overall. So certainly he went here in the 115 range. So that's great value on Wan'Dale. And hey, maybe he scores a few more touchdowns, but as we just did the math, maybe not. So those are the teams that I liked. Mike, outside of our 2 teams and maybe those 2 teams, what's 1 or 2 that you enjoyed?
So I love the Wan'Dale pick. That's just from a PPR aspect, like over 100 some odd targets last year. So Jay Sarge is one you mentioned, but the team that I like, the Jay Sarge is a team that I like, but the one I'm actually like really looking at, and maybe it's not, like it's not off the cuff, is Greg at the 1-4, Saquon Barkley, Josh Jacobs. Those 2 are going to be at the top of attempts, right? Rushing. AJ Brown, who again everybody thinks had this down season, but still was tight end 20 overall, right? I think that's the floor. Then that's still a really nice floor. Chuba Hubbard, again, the running back one, the guy who just got paid in Carolina, is a nice pick there. DJ Moore, kind of ho-hum about him right now, but DJ Moore has just been a consistent guy other than really last year. So again, not a bad wide receiver to have. I really like what he did with TJ Hawkinson, Justin Herbert, and Jordan Addison, and then Jake Ferguson at the end. Jake Ferguson, say what you want. I think
Sneaky.
the addition, sneaky, just a PPR guy. That Mason Taylors, Jake Ferguson's, the Hunter Henrys, just the guys who are going to be around the first down markers, going to be getting PPR points. I also think like George Pickens opens things up in the middle of the field, the short to intermediate for Jake Ferguson. So I really like that pick. And Cam Ward at the 10 board is a QB2, a little risky. But again, I still think he finishes in the quarterback 2 range. He's going to throw the football a lot. So not a bad option.
Yep. I love that. Although as you were talking, I couldn't help but look over at the 103 at Foxworth. Jamar Chase, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Garrett Wilson, Terry McLaurin, Ted Pickens. It's like, damn. Oh, man. That's pretty sexy as well.
The running back scared me a little bit on that one. Not scared me because I think Jalen Warren in the beginning of the season is going to be a nice addition, right? And then Brian Robinson, like I feel like he's a dude we count out and it just kind of produces okay.
Agree.
Right? So, I mean, a little weary about the running backs there, but again, the plethora of wide receivers that he has is just, and the 2 quarterbacks is just phenomenal.
Yep. Agree with you. Look, as always, as long as your guys stay healthy, you're going to do pretty well in fantasy football. But you want to also try and find those values. If you look at the 110, for example, just a running back heavy build, 6 running backs taken the first 9 picks. It's not that those are bad picks. You just get concerned because last season we certainly had extraordinary health across the board at the position at running back. This season, I think it's fair to expect a few more bigger name running back injuries. We don't know who those are. We never wish injury on any player. But I think that's going to regress to the mean. So just be careful with that. Meanwhile, if you're starting with Achane, Derrick Henry, and Alvin Kamara in this format, I don't have any issues with you either. I think that's going to be it for us. Let's figure this out. What are we doing? Nope.
Man,
there we go. Hey,
I have a lot more gray hair here than.
Listen, man, I'm starting to get the grays in the beard actually, which is
I have it already. Jesus.
Which is happening. Listen, bro, we only do what we can. I really should tone down the lighting here, and that way I don't have to look at myself so much. But, Mike, thanks so much for joining us. This has been the Fantasy Roundtable. We run this Saturdays here on the Fantasy Football Universe. So please join us then. Of course, we have daily content coming to you, whether it's Mike and the Dynasty Dogs, rolling out their live shows or the recorded shows or their shorts, whether we have SC Romero and the Debbie Planet with Spencer as well, doing that, or Adjust the Ranks, which is my show where we do a lot of mock drafts just like this. We have daily content coming to you both now and, of course, in season. So please like and subscribe if you like this content. We are in your feed daily all over. We're on YouTube. We're on X.
Whether you like it or not, we're there.
Yeah, listen, we're in your face. So, if you do like it, give us a like. Otherwise, just leave us on in the background. It helps with the algorithm. So we appreciate you. Mike, any final thoughts before we close this out?
No, I just, like I mentioned, I need to get in some more Scott Fishbowl mocks. So let's do this again before my draft. And again, we just dropped an episode this morning for the Dynasty Dogs. So check that out if you have some extra time. If you want to listen to the most mediocre podcast, that's us. You can check us out. I would really appreciate it. But again, this is really fun. I love Scott Fishbowl. Again, this is my second year doing it. I think it adds different dimensions to things that make it fun.
Absolutely, especially with this like positionless dimension this year. It's just really interesting to try and test your mettle and really see if you can predict those guys who are going to score and show out for your fantasy team. So that's enough from us. Please join us here every day on the Fantasy Football Universe. You heard from Mike. Join him. You have a Dynasty Dogs YouTube channel, I believe, as well, but you certainly have it on X, certainly over on TikTok as well.
I'm just on your YouTube. I just have the Dynasty Dog V2 where I go and like things.
Gotcha. But TikTok, certainly you guys are over there producing content all the time as well. So follow us everywhere. Look for us everywhere. We're the FFU. I've talked far too much, so we're going to end this one. For Mike, I'm Jeremy. See you later.
Have a good night.